In this lesson, we are going to review how to install and configure the Playground CLI. As we commented in the previous session, this is going to be in the future the main replacement for the Docker instance because it is very fast. Let's see the steps to set up our environment. First, I'm supposing that you already followed the steps in the previous lessons, so you already have a WordPress developed repository locally cloned. We should now access the folder of this repository. Inside the folder, you must first build everything with npm install and then npm run build. In this case, we do not use the npm run build :dev command because we need to run Playground CLI from the build directory, not from the SLC directory. Finally, we should run this long command. Consider creating an alias in your terminal so you don't have to remember this long command by heart. Now, I'm going to quickly explain what it does. What we are doing with npm that we already must have installed is running the CLI latest version and passing several configuration parameters. The first parameter tells that we want to run the server mode. The second is asking Playground to mount the build folder in the Playground instance. The build folder is where the WordPress final installation files live after running npm run build. This is the same structure as when we download WordPress from wordpress.org. Next, we set an install mode that skips installing file to serve for the purpose we are looking here, using the core repository clone files. After, we automatically log in the system and set the site URL to the default host and port, and also mount any directory we want to preserve, like plugins, database, etc. So changes in that directory are saved between runs, just like the Docker instance. Finally, we can log into our WordPress system through the 9400 port. We have to understand that we could simply run this command anywhere in our system, and it will spin a fresh instance, just like when we go into playground.wordpress.net, and as I explained in the previous lesson. But we don't want this for testing locally. Our target is to mount the local repository, as we could be doing some changes in the code that we want to see reflected in the Playground instance immediately. Before closing, I need to explain some specific about Windows. First, be aware that if you are in Windows and WSL2, currently there is a bug where localhost is not binded and you may have troubles accessing the Playground instance. Consider that you might need to configure your .wsl config with the localhost forwarding to true. This is because Playground by default binds to a local IP and not 0.0.0.0. The WSL configuration is very tricky, and at the moment I'm doing this video, there is some room for improvement. And this is pretty much everything you need to know for now. We could also add a -- blueprint with a path to the JSON file to load the Playground with a blueprint like we saw in the previous lesson. But since we have access to the full file system of the repository, this is not going to be as critical as when we use the Playground website. Also remember that we should be running the npm install and the npm run build every time you pull data from the Git repository. These commands are not related with the testing environment itself, but with the file management process. If you don't want to keep running npm run build, you can leave a watcher in the background with npm run watch. It will update the build automatically every time you introduce any changes in the SLC folder. Finally, here is the CLI documentation URL in case you want to take a look. And now we are ready to jump directly into real testing scenarios using any of the environments we have already talked about.